Seth Tibbott here, founder of Tofurky, and I first went vegan in the 1970s after reading a book about a spiritual commune in Tennessee called The Farm, which is where I went and found tempeh, which was the first product that we made at Turtle Island Foods, which is the parent company of Tofurky. It was actually, though, 2011 that I went permanently vegan after visiting the farm sanctuary in Watkins Glen, New York, and hanging out with the pigs. And I was just like, this beautiful, loving animal. Like, I wasn't eating bacon then, but I was still eating like cheese and stuff. And I just swore off any dairy products or animal products for good in the year 2011, after seeing the animals and how beautiful these animals were at the farm sanctuary in New York.
So in the 70s, for clarification, you were mostly vegetarian from that point on.
Yeah, I kind of was going back and forth between vegan and vegetarian, and I'd have periods of both. But this commune in Tennessee was totally vegan. You know, in 1975, when I first went there, you didn't even call it vegan. It was called, there was vegetarians and there was pure vegetarians. And so these were 1,200 hippies living on 1,600 acres, and they were eating a pure vegetarian diet.
I've heard strict vegetarian.
Yeah, strict was another one. And there was all sorts of names. You know, historically, the vegetarian diet, before the word vegetarian was coined in the 1840s in England, people called it the Pythagorean diet, after Pythagoras. So there's a lot of different names, or the flesh-free diet. But in 1847, the vegetarian word was coined. And
1947.
1847 vegetarian.
Oh, okay.
1944 was Donald Watson vegan, and the way he chose the word vegan was he took the first 3 letters of vegetarian and the last 2 letters of vegetarian, and he said, this will be the beginning and the end of vegetarian, which will be vegan. Clever.
Why didn't you just go full vegan from the 70s on?
70s, there really wasn't a lot of information on vegetarian or vegan diets. Like, the vegan word wasn't even used so much. There was not a lot of information on how farm animals were treated, for instance. Like, PETA started in 1980, the same year that I started making tempeh at Turtle Island Foods, which was to become Tofurky. And there was not even a lot of information on health. There was not a lot of information. There was some on the environment, like this book, Diet for a Small Planet by Frances Moore Lappé. I had read that, and I was very impressed with the inefficiency, and I had been a naturalist, so it seemed like an ecological way to eat. So I was coming at it from an ecological standpoint. But then when I looked at the animal piece as time went on and there was more information, then I was like, I gotta go vegan.
Wow. And did you notice any physical changes after going vegan from being kind of vegetarian predominantly?
Actually, not too much, you know, because I was so close. I was more like flexo-vegan at that point, and I was pretty close to doing it, but just spending time with the animals kicked me over into the thing, and I've never looked back.
And how did you come to start Tofurky?
As a vegetarian/vegan, there was nothing really for me to eat at Thanksgiving. It was like, you know, all the meat eater friends were eating turkey and they were having this big party, and here was the lone little vegetarians or vegans, and we were eating like salads or lasagna, and those are all good, but they aren't like, you know, this festive thing that you had once a year. So I had been experimenting with my friends, and about like, what could we eat that would be festive at Thanksgiving? And so I had looked at stuffed pumpkins, but it kind of collapsed in the oven and it was a failure. And then we had a gluten roast one year that was so tough you couldn't cut with a chainsaw. So we had failures, but Then in 1995, I teamed up with my friend Hans Robel of the Higher Taste, and we created the Tofurky Feast in 1995, and it was like almost an instant hit.
Wow, that's so cool, because it's such like like everybody knows Tofurky, even if like most non-vegans even know what Tofurky is. You know?
Yeah, it's a word in the dictionary now. It was
really?
entered there, yeah, Tofurky.
Wow.
A lot of my partners and business associates were like, Tofurky's a stupid name, like, why are you doing that? And I was like, it's a fun name. I want to have fun, you know. I've been trying to be serious businessman all these years and I'm failing. Like, why not just have fun and be who I am? So I like to have fun, and I thought that the name Tofurky was good, and turns out it resonated because people knew exactly what it was, but that it was also a little bit of humor and self-effacement in there. You know, sometimes we can come across as vegans sometimes too serious, and this was lighthearted, and people just liked the name. And a good name is really something that'll take you a long ways, is what all I can say.
Yeah. And was it you that came up with the name?
No, Tofurky, the name Tofurky has actually been in kind of folk use for some recipes. If you look back into the 70's, you can find this recipe for Tofurky, and the first Tofurkys were using this recipe of the time, where you took tofu and you mashed it up, you put a colander and you lined it with cheesecloth, and you put the tofu in there, and then you smashed a hole in it with your fist, and you put the stuffing in the hole, and you flipped it out onto a baking sheet, and you basted it and baked it, and it was laborious, but it was really good. And that was the first Tofurkys.
Do you have any kids?
Yes, I have one son who's 31.
Yeah. What does he think about all this?
He thinks it's pretty cool, and you know, he graduated in math and he went to work. He's in the high-tech industry in Seattle, but he's you know, a big fan of it, and he's a great guy.
Has he adopted it too? Is he doing the vegan thing?
He's been vegan and vegetarian both in his life, and but he's like, at his work they can send out for lunch, and he always buys vegan lunches there, so I would call him flexo-vegan.
Okay. Some people might think, well, you're either vegan or you're not, because it's kind of hard to like.
Yeah.
It's hard to be like vegan and justify it. You know, once you know what happens with the animals, like in respect to the dairy industry especially.
Yeah. But people take a long time. Everybody has a different path, and you know, you're just trying to encourage people to be the most vegan that they can at the time, and I love being vegan. And you know, it's funny because a lot of my friends who had been vegetarians with me in the 70's became more meat eaters, and then now a lot of them, like, I go to these potlucks now and they're like half of the food or more is vegan, and so many of them have become vegan just on their own, or they've seen food that I eat, some of them, but it's just great to see people becoming vegan.
How do you define vegan?
I define vegan as a lifestyle of somebody that eats no animal products at all, no dairy, no eggs, no cheese, and they also wear no fur, no leather, and they are just trying to be the best citizens of the planet that they can. And we're not perfect, but we're trying to suck less, I would say.
What illnesses have you acquired from going vegan?
Oh, let's see. I've developed a taste for some pretty tasty foods.
Oh man, that's got to be tough.
But
what does your doctor think of that?
I'm 72 now, and in my circle of friends, I'm one of the few people that still has a prostate or is not on statins or things like that for cholesterol. So I'm feeling good.
Did you have companion animals when you were a kid?
I grew up with cats. I've had a couple of dogs, and I don't have a cat now. The last 2 nights here, though, interestingly, I've had one cat meowing outside my window at 3 a.m. And I'm just wondering, if it's around tonight, I think I might go out and pick it up and see what's going on. Maybe bring it into the room and find somebody here. This looks like a pretty good place to find a home for a cat. What do you think?
Yeah. Could it be that having had companion animals might have helped, warm you up to the idea of becoming a vegan?
Possibly, but I was raised, meat and potatoes, and my parents were older and they had gone through the Depression. And in the Depression, if you were eating protein and meat, you were making it. They were, product of their age and the marketing and propaganda of their age. And we had a small little cottage on the Chesapeake Bay, and, we were catching crabs, but I always felt like it was terrible, like when that moment that you put these crabs in this pot and you heard them scrambling around for their life, and then the heat, and gradually it becomes quiet. I think that was a memory of that I wasn't, looking back, not too proud of, but it was more of a driving thing subconsciously that created me more into animal lover and vegan than actually companion animals. It was just listening to these crabs die.
Wow. You remind me of an interview I did recently with Danny Taylor, who's a bodybuilder. She had an early experience with lobsters that was kind of similar. What do you think are some of the most important reasons for people to consider this?
I think that it's a, win-win-win. When I first started, like I said, I came in through the environmental door, and at that time it was like, I want people to eat low on the food chain, and that was my goal with tempeh. It didn't make any sense to run these soybeans through animals and then come out 16 pounds of soybeans to create 1 pound of protein. That didn't make sense as a environmentalist, because I loved the wild animals and I loved the woods, and I figured, like, if there was a more efficient way to make protein, we wouldn't need to take away the habitat so much from these wild animals that I loved. So I came in through that door, but the more I studied and learned about it, it became a win-win-win, because the diet, was a good one, and I was reading more. The more I read about it, the more I saw that it was a very healthy diet, and some of the longest living people in the world were eating vegan. Some of the greatest athletes were vegan. And then, of course, just stepping out of the cruelest way of producing protein, and the suffering, not participating in the suffering that is caused by eating not just animals, but really baby animals. I mean, chickens, they have like 6 weeks on Earth. Like, we're eating babies. Turkeys, same thing. You're eating like toddlers, and we're, just not giving animals a chance to live and die naturally, like us. And so it just was, the more I looked at it, the more I said, this is a win-win-win, and I gotta do it. So anytime you can get a win-win-win in life, you gotta take it if you can, right?
Heck yeah. So the win-win-win is why you think it's important for others?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had like a stranger get aggressive towards you because of this way of living?
Yeah, I guess I have. One story that stands out is, like, there's a sign in the little town that I live where it was like a conservative guy kind of was doing conservative messaging about life and his political views. I wrote a letter or something to the paper about his sign and his views, and he put up there on the sign, how, like, he was like, vegans someday on their deathbed are gonna, feel sorry that they didn't eat meat, or, it was just clearly meant for me. It was just like, I forget the actual wording, but it was, the tone of it was, it's stupid to eat vegan because you're depriving yourself of all this tasty food. And he didn't know about how tasty Tofurky was, for instance, or all these other great foods that we have now. And so that's one thing that stands out. But
what kind of stuff do you like to eat on an ideal day?
Well, I start out with a bowl of usually whole grain cereal, granola, or raisin bran, always with berries. I have blueberries and blackberries, raspberries, which are like, I look at them as like little vitamin pills. And then I have avocado toast and usually like one little soy sausage or something. I'll eat usually like maybe a Tofurky sandwich, or on the grill I'll grill a burger or something for lunch, and a salad. I always try and eat a salad every day. And then dinners, different sort of things like I don't know, sometimes Mexican or enchiladas, and once again with a salad. And in summer, usually a beer, a nice cold beer. One beer. I can't drink more than one beer. I'm a failed alcoholic.
That's funny. Could you be with somebody who isn't vegan?
Yeah, I could. And, it's really just something that it's a personal choice. And I think as much as I'd like people around me to be vegan, I think love conquers all, and, people are on the path in different stages, and love's an amazing thing.
Have you ever had any luck helping others go vegan? And if so, do you have any tips on how to encourage others?
I think for me it's the soft sell of just living a good life and being an example more than it is hard sell. So yeah, I've encouraged people to go vegan, and I think there's people that have done that. And so, Tofurky's been a great product. We get a lot of mail and email from people about how it was a real force in their lives, and made it so much easier to go vegan. And
yeah, I think it's like one of the first vegan products I ever became familiar with, outside of maybe soy milk or something.
And it's actually one of the Tofurky vegetarian. It was the first year of the Tofurky feast. It was called a vegetarian feast, and then the next year it was vegan. So it was one of the earliest products to use the word vegan on the label, actually. So it was, an early vegan product in a lot of people's lives.
Why do you think some people quit? You got any ideas on that?
People read a lot of stuff. There's pressures on people and families and traditions, that people want to go back to for some reason. But, even the people that do quit, it's not like they go 100% back to eating meat and potatoes, like there's the term flexitarian, which is now like 30% or something of America, which eats like about half of their meals a week meatless. And a lot of those people are people that had experimented with veganism, and they take back with them the Tofurky and different products that they really liked about that. And so there may not be vegan 100% anymore, but they are mostly vegan or partly vegan. And so I don't really know all the reasons that there are in people's lives, but I think vegan is the best way to go.
Yeah, no doubt. How do you stay positive in such a sick world and maintain that humor you got there? How do you do that?
Well, my dad was a cartoonist, and he imparted a lot of humor, and he was a storyteller and a jokester, and my mom was very loving and gracious, so I was lucky to have a family, that imprinted those creative traits and humorous traits in our house. I had an uncle that was really a role model for me, that was always cracking jokes and playing around. So I think early childhood really has a big imprint on people. So I like that, and I think we're the otters of the universe, really. We like to play, we like to have fun, and I think humor is a portal to the human heart, like if you can, like people remember jokes, and they remember, good times and laughter. Laughter is very important, and you need to, if you can have a good laugh once a day or more, it's a recipe for health, I would say.
I feel like you probably got a good quote you'd like to share with us.
Good quote. Well, let's see. Life's too short not to love everybody, and it's far too long to hate. How about that?
Nice, I like that. Now, is that something you came up with?
That's in a song
Okay.
that I heard.
Okay.
And
Yeah, because it kind of sounds a little familiar. I was just trying to remember where.
yeah, songs,
Yeah.
great.
Do you think we'll ever see a vegan world?
I don't think I will, but you know what is going to be probably the first vegan planet? Mars. When they start going to Mars, they're not going to be sending cows and pigs up there for 8 months, shitting all over the place. But nor when they get up there, it's going to be a struggle to grow enough food just for people. They won't have we only have this inefficient system because we can afford it, or we think we can afford it. We really can't. As climate change becomes more and more of a factor, we really need to look at all systems and how can we be the most efficient and the less impactful on the planet. But when they get up there to Mars, they're going to be struggling to just get enough lettuce and celery and everything to grow for humans, to keep humans alive, so they won't have this wasteful, they won't be able to afford that. But as far as the Earth goes, I do think that we're trending towards that, and it's going to be a long and arduous fight, and because meat eating is historically, there's a lot of tradition and stuff around it, but the food is so dang good now that if you can eat without harming people and just still enjoy, people want to enjoy their food, and it's so enjoyable now to eat this incredible vegan food. And as it becomes more and more apparent that this is the way that we can eat and be happy and also live in a planet that isn't like crazy hot or crazy flooded or whatever, I think that the whole card is still the piece that I came in on, which is the environmental piece. And I think that that's going to push the world towards veganism, and we'll get there.
Now, as far as the environment, a lot of times people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. And so I don't usually imagine that being the most ideal way to sell it. I mean, it seems the most obvious is you're eating an animal's body parts, organs, and secretions, right? There's got to be an ethical thing there, right? And then maybe the health thing too. And then of course the environment as well, right?
Yeah, I think that, that's a good point, that right now most people come into it for health, because they're self-interested. My grandfather Seth, who was a lawyer that I was named for, he used to say, like, doctors see people at their worst, and ministers see people at their best, and lawyers see people as they truly are, self-interested SOBs, and I think that's it with food. It's like people, what's it going to do for me, and what's it going to be?
As far as the environment's concerned, it's anthropogenic climate change that we're concerned about, right? It's the human-induced. Climate change is inevitable, right?
Right.
But there's also other factors, right? I mean, the anaerobic lagoons from the concentrated animal feeding operations that contaminate the waterways and pollute communities. And so there's a lot of variables in respect to the environment, not just climate change, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. My hope is that, that science will win out, and governments and politicians will eventually lead people. I think a good leader is one that takes people where they should go, but where they don't want to go, and that will look at that and say, this is the most efficient way to live and eat, and we've just got to do this.
As I learned more about how we've evolved and how the Earth has evolved, the history of the planet, all these mass extinctions, some of these were induced, by not just some cataclysmic comet or asteroid or whatever. We know that some of them were induced by bacteria, just very small organisms just overpopulating, putting too much methane in the air or whatever. And so we've got humans now that are doing that. And basically we come from that same bacteria that was capable of doing that. So why would anybody think that humans can't do this when bacteria could do it, right?
You got to look up the Fermi paradox, which is it's called the Fermi paradox, which is like, it basically asks, in a universe that has more Earth-like planets than grains of sand on Earth, where are all the aliens and why haven't they visited us? They say there's, of civilizations, the Fermi paradox posits that there is a filter, a great filter that filters out organizations and crushes organizations, and they die off because of this filter. And so the question is, are we before the filter, or is climate change the filter? Or are we beyond the filter? Is it something like multicellular organisms being developed? It's really fascinating to think about and to wonder, is nuclear war, or is self-interest, do people just get greedy, and eventually that greed comes back to crush all evolving organizations or civilizations before they can develop technology to branch out and explore other worlds. So it's an interesting thing, but I read a lot about the Fermi paradox, and it's...
Are you on social media?
I'm on a little bit. I don't do a ton on social media, but
So if somebody wanted to look you up, maybe learn a little bit more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
Nice.
Marginally.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, that's cool. And then I guess they could just look up your name?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover, or any last minute
I think we went a long way, didn't we?
Yeah.
We got to the Fermi paradox. I mean, what more do you want? That's as good as I got.
Do you have a classic joke you want to throw out there real quick?
Do you know why the Tofurky crossed the road?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know.
To prove it wasn't chicken.
Ah, I like that. Well, thanks. That's a good one to close on.
Good.